Julian, Reese, and Derik will be vital for the Terps to beat Ohio State tonight.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work for InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys go to Inside Black and Gold for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Maryland basketball has a big game tonight, and I think that Julian, Reese, and Derik are going to be the difference in this game. So, Ohio State tonight, huge game, first Big Ten game of the schedule for Maryland basketball at 6:30, so not too far from now when I'm recording it. And I honestly could not be more happy that we're playing a Big Ten game. I talked about it yesterday. I'm tired of these Mickey Mouse games. I'm tired of playing Bucknell and Alcorn State. I'm tired of some of these games that Maryland's going to dominate. And we've looked good even when we've played some better opponents like Marquette, like Villanova. I think we've looked pretty good. And I hope we've played enough good opponents to beat a team like Ohio State. But I think that Maryland's Derik and Julian Reese are going to be the key to beating the Buck. Guys, I looked at the line. Maryland's favored by 5.5. I think it's moved up to, which is interesting. So Maryland's definitely a favorite. Not a huge favorite, but definitely a favorite in this game. And I think we have a really good chance at winning it. And I think the matchups are really interesting between Ohio State and Maryland, because I think that their strength is kind of the opposite of what our strength is. I think they have good players in a lot of spots. I think we have good players in a lot of spots. I do think Maryland's a little bit better. I think there's a reason why we're favored, but I also think that when you look at Maryland versus you look at Ohio State, I think that the strengths are opposite. I think our strength, like I've been saying all season, is down low with Reese and Derik. And I believe that against Ohio State, for us to win this game and for us to play at the level I want us to, and for us to win this game and cover the spread and whatever else you want to say about Maryland basketball tonight at 6:30, they have to play well. And I feel pretty good about Maryland basketball, those two guys dominating Ohio State down low. I think they have a really good chance of doing that because Ohio State, honestly, isn't that big this year. They're not a huge team. They're like, I was looking it up. I was reading some stuff. Their leading rebounder is only 6'6", and he's plays a lot of the four. They have this kid. His name is that's only 6'6", that plays a lot of the four. Devin Royal, who leads their team in rebounds, a good player for sure. But I think whoever has him, because Queen or Reese is going to get him. And don't get me wrong, he's a good player. He's definitely a solid Big Ten guy. But Queen and Reese are both above 6'10". I think there's no reason why that whoever gets this guy can play a lot of post game, shoot over him, get shots over him, because I think he's a little bit small. And that's a big reason why I don't think Ohio State's team is that big. They brought in the kid Aaron Bradshaw from the portal, but he's kind of been up and down in terms of his play so far this year. I think he's talented, but I don't think he's done anything too special this year in terms of his play. But I think that either Queen or Reese are going to get a smaller type of guy on him. And if Ohio State decides to double, which is very possible, I still think there's a way for those two bigs to dominate. I think it's pretty clear they got to be able to pass the ball, and they should be able to see over it because this Ohio State team isn't huge. It's not a huge team. Even the guards I'm going to talk about soon are not the biggest guys on the team. And so I think Queen and Reese both have good matchups. And I think that Ohio State might have to also foul a lot. And that's one of the things Ohio State hasn't been good at so far this year. They've been fouling a lot. That's one of the things when you look at the stats that they have not done a good job at. They have been fouling a lot more than you would want. A coach would want. And that's one of the things. I don't know if you guys how much college basketball you guys have watched this year, but I've watched a good amount. And there's one thing that drives me crazy is a lot of these college teams can't play defense without fouling. And Ohio State is one of those teams. And so I look at them and I say tonight against Maryland, they have the advantage in the paint. Maryland has the advantage in the paint. So I think getting Royal, potentially Bradshaw, into foul trouble could be something that's really important. But Bradshaw has only played 4 games. So I don't know exactly what the deal is with him. He is definitely having an up and down year, but he's definitely not been. I think he had an outside reason, but we'll see what happens with that situation. It actually looks like Bradshaw's probably out because he's being investigated from stuff on campus. So I don't think he's supposed to play. From what I read, it looks like he's not supposed to play while they investigate what's going on with him. So that means Reese and Queen have even more of an advantage. I don't know how they guard them, and I also don't think they're going to create a ton of offense down low. Now, here's the thing about Ohio State. I think we have the advantage at the big man spot in the front court, and I don't think it's necessarily even close. I think Reese and Queen are going to be the best 2 bigs on the court, and that's what it's going to be a lot of the times that we play. But they have 2 really talented guards. They have some really talented guard play that's going to make it pretty challenging for Maryland to win this game overall. And those 2 guys can both shoot the ball, and that's what I'm concerned about this Ohio State team, because they have guys that can shoot the ball at a really high level. And so it's going to be interesting to see, can the Terps stop them from shooting the ball? Because right now they shoot it at a really high level and as one of the better teams in the Big Ten. But they got 2 guards that they're not particularly big guys, but they got this kid, Bruce Thornton, a junior guard who's 6'2". He's the Ohio State's leading scorer with 15.2 points per game. He was 3rd team All Big Ten last year. He led the team in scoring last year. And so he's the guy that I'm going to be keeping my eye on, because I do think Ohio State has a real talent at the guard spot. I'm not necessarily saying they're much better than the guards that Maryland have, but some might tell you that they have the advantage. I still love our guards, and I think that that's where we're improved this year. But I do think they have somewhat of you could definitely argue they have an advantage. And the thing is, Bruce Thornton, and then there's the freshman John Mobley Jr., who I've heard a lot of good things about, who acts, and they both shoot the ball really well. They're both shooting in the 50% from the 3-point line, which is scary in terms of a Maryland team that hasn't shot the ball particularly well at times. And so I think that that's going to be a big part of it, is their guards versus our big man. I look at it this way. I think Maryland's a better team, and I think Vegas knows that. I think the line shows that. We also have really good guards too. I don't think they have a ton of offense going on down low, and I'm not super concerned about it. But I think that when you look at their team, I think that whoever has the better game, like in terms of the bigs versus the Ohio State guards, Maryland's bigs versus the Ohio State guards, are going to be who probably wins this game. I think it's a closer game. I can definitely see Ohio State covering. It's at Maryland. It's a big home game. I think it's supposed to be like a whiteout and everything, and I honestly can't wait to watch. I've been really liking watching this Maryland basketball team, and I'm just really excited that we play a team that actually has real talent. But Ohio State just suffered a heartbreaker to Pitt, losing by 1, and so they're going to be ready to go. They lost to Texas A&M earlier on in the season by 14, so that's where their 2 losses come from. They haven't really beaten anybody that is super impressive. They did beat Texas earlier on in the season. That was a big win. But other than that, they don't have a ton of big wins, which is similar to us. So I think both teams are going to be looking to win this game. And you want to start Big Ten playoff 1-0. I think that's really important rather than starting in a hole 0-1. And then you got Purdue and you feel like you really want to win that Purdue game. So you don't want to start the season off 0-1. This is definitely one you want to get at home. Maryland's been really good at home the past couple of years, and I don't see that changing. I think Maryland wins tonight. I'm not going to say the Terps cover. I feel like the line's kind of sharp. I don't know exactly what will happen in terms of that. I wouldn't like bet that, but I do think Maryland has a good chance at winning the game at home. We've been a good home team over the past couple of years, and I don't see that stopping. Maryland football came up big in National Signing Day. Talk about that next. Hate the team you drafted in season-long fantasy, but want to stay in the action. Introducing Bettor Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork trumps talent and you can play with friends and not against them. Pick more or less than on real-time player stats, strategize your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the daily fantasy movement at Bettor Together. Bettor Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application, and it provides a sense of friendship, enhances the social experience of watching sports, makes you realize that DFS is fun. Daily fantasy sport is fun alone, but it's a lot cooler and a lot more fun with other people. And it puts your group chat to the test and lets you prove you're the best. So download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to play in a contest against me. Because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. So National Signing Day, the early signing day just is wrapping up or did wrap up for Maryland football, and I think it was important. I was going to talk about basketball for 2 segments, but I think we want to talk about this a little bit today because the Ohio State game I'll probably talk about that tomorrow and how the Terps looked. And so I did want to talk about the signing day because this class legitimately could make or break the Mike Locksley era, could make or break Maryland football for like a while. Because I believe this class is the most talented class Coach Locksley has brought in, and I think it's our best class in the last decade. One of the recruiting websites says it's a top 25 class in the country, which I think is exactly where we want to be. And I think it's a really, really, really talented class with plenty of really good players. And I look at this class and I say, Maryland just struggled really hard this year. And this class could have all the tools to fix it. Now, it's not easy to fix. It's not easy for football players to come in right away and make an impact. It's just not, because it's football. You need time to develop. It's a physical sport. This isn't basketball where Derik can come into Maryland and be our best player already. It's not easy to do that. But when I look at the Maryland football 2025 class, I do see a bunch of guys that are going to be able to come in early and play right away. There's 4-star talent legitimately all across this class, which is really cool to see. And I do think they have a really good chance at this class being Coach Locksley's best class. But let me tell you something. If this class goes down the drain, if it doesn't live up to the expectations, doesn't live up to the hype, and there's a good amount of hype, and people transfer and we can't keep people in the class, which is a problem. A lot of top players that we've gotten, we haven't been able to keep, and a lot of those guys are high-level players at other places or in the NFL, and I think that's part of the battle. So you can recruit a great class, but if Coach Locksley can't keep some of these guys, then it's not going to matter. And the really special thing about this signing day is we didn't have anyone flip on signing on this early signing day period. I was afraid with how Maryland finished up that someone was going to flip. I know Malik Washington, a lot of schools probably try to contact him and touch him up and see if he wanted to be a Terp. And there were other players as well. Jalen Gilchrist, I know there's teams that probably tried and wanted him. but Maryland was able to keep all these guys despite having a bad year, a horrible year. And I think that's something that is important and deserves some claps. And give credit to the recruiting staff at Maryland and Mike Loxley and everybody for actually being able to keep everybody on the team. I think that is an important part of doing the recruiting. Is when you have a bad year, you can't just lose everybody. You see schools right now that are really struggling that either are bringing in a ton of guys or losing a ton of guys. Like you look at LSU right now. Like LSU, a lot of people are in the portal and they're losing a lot of football commits. And so I think that the fact that we were able to keep our class together, that's a top 25 talented class, which is Mike Loxley's best class, I think is extremely important. And there's a ton of talent, and there's talent in the right spots. Obviously, Malik Washington, holding on to him after originally, I know the Underwood kids switched from LSU, but originally Malik Washington, Michigan was trying to get Malik Washington for a while, and the fact that he stuck with Maryland, I think, is important. The four-star quarterback, that's really the future of our team and of this program, and a lot of weight is going to be held on him. The fact that we were able to sign him, a top 5 quarterback in the class, depending on where you look, as well as getting some other four-star talent in the right spots. Like I think that we got two linemen that I think are going to be really good players for us. Jalen Gilchrist is one of the best offensive linemen in the class. And I don't really like linemen coming in right away and playing, but our line might be that bad where he comes in and he plays right away, and hopefully he can be steady. And then we also have Bryce Jenkins, who's a 4-star talent as well. That's already 316 pounds. That's going to be a really good player on the defensive line, probably. I think he's going to be. And so I think we have guys in the trenches. We also have some skill guys like a Zymir Smith, athlete. That's a 4-star that was committed to Alabama. And then Messiah Delhomme at safety is really talented. Like we have guys in the right spots that have a chance to be really good players. Carlton Smith, 4-star linebacker on Rivals. Like we have plenty of really talented guys in this class. I think that this class is going to be important, and the fact that we were able to keep all of them is huge. When it starts, people start chipping away at your class, and you start losing a guy, 2, 3. At Maryland, like in Alabama can take it. Even LSU, they're losing a ton of guys. They can take it and probably still be a pretty good team next year. There's other schools that can take it. Georgia, those schools, they can lose 3 or 4 flips. They can take it. But we're not a school that, like, if Malik Washington flipped and Jalen Gilchrist flipped and we still had a couple other 4-stars, I wouldn't feel great about this class. We're a school that has to be able to maintain these guys and actually keep these guys for 3 or 4 years, or it's just not going to be what we want it to look like, and our recruiting is not going to look like, and our team's not going to look like how we want it to. But this class, if it doesn't pan out, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Loxley's gone or out of a job. But if it does, it can be the start of something really special at Maryland football and us getting back to where we should be, at least where we've been the last couple of years, if not even better than that. Mike Loxley got rid of Josh Gattis. What does that mean for the Terps? Talk about that next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets, all in the NFL, all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. There's so many different things you can bet on FanDuel. There's so many different things. College basketball. Today is a big college basketball. If you want to take Maryland -5.5 against Ohio State, you can do that on FanDuel. or if you want to bet on the NFL, Thursday Night Football, Lions, Packers, you can do that at FanDuel as well. And of course, the NBA too. You can bet on that on FanDuel. College football, huge Saturday of football with the conference championships. FanDuel's got you. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch to make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Mike Locksley let go of Josh Gattis, and I have mixed feelings about it because I think that it's a good thing partially, but I think that we're going to talk about this more. There's a lot to talk about. I wanted to address it today. I didn't know exactly where to because I thought we were going to talk about this a lot this offseason, and I wanted to talk about the Ohio State Maryland basketball game in the first segment. I think I definitely have a lot of different feelings. One thing, there's a stat that's like under Mike Locksley, the Terps averaged 16 points a game when he took over the play calling. When it was Gattis, it was like 30 points per game or something like that, which is something that it's like one of those things. It's like you look at a stat like that and you kind of side-eye it and you say, you wonder, was Gattis the problem? I'm not saying he was or wasn't. I think he was part of it. I mean, I think here's what I say. I think that I don't really care who our offensive coordinator was this year. I don't think they would have been successful with how the Terps were built on offense. I just don't. So I don't want to just blame Gattis on everything. I think there were some things that he should have done better at. But I can't just be like, yeah, Gattis was the entire problem because I don't care who was our OC this year. I don't care if it was Ben Johnson guy who's the best OC maybe in the world right now, the Lions OC. I don't think we would have been successful because we couldn't block anyone up front. We couldn't run the ball, and we didn't have any pass protection because our offensive line just wasn't good. So I don't know how you would expect our offense to do anything, whoever the OC is. It starts up front. If you can't do anything, if you're not at least okay, if you're horrible up front, like it's one thing to be bad. There's one thing to be as bad as Maryland was. Like we were horrible. And I think last year we were not great, but it wasn't horrible. And so I can't blame that on Gattis. I can say maybe get quicker passing game, whatever, but we had a lot of that implemented. So I say that's not his fault. But I think what I've been tired of the last couple of years with Gattis is that all he does is want to throw the ball with Maryland football. And I think that wasn't the way to go. We play in a league where running the football is important. And if you can't run the ball, you're probably not going to win a ton of games in the Big Ten. You're just not, because teams are going to out-possession you. Teams are going to take up a ton of clock. And it's tough when you can't run the ball and you're depending on the pass. Like this isn't the Big 12 where everyone just chucks it around, or the old Pac-12 where everyone just chucks it around and it's okay. Like in the Big Ten, teams have good offensive lines. Teams can run the ball. Teams can control the clock. And when you can't ever do that, then you're just not going to play well. And Maryland had, under Gattis, never felt like a team that could really do that. That never felt like a team that could control the clock. Felt like a team that can never run the ball. It would be like we wouldn't even try a lot of games. And not saying we have the offensive line to do it, but it's annoying when you don't even try sometimes under Gattis. And I thought we threw the ball. There'd be times we just throw the ball like 40, 50 times a game. We'd always lead the Big Ten in attempts throwing the football a game. But I don't think this year was on him. I just really don't. And he's done some good things as our OC. Like Talia's the all-time Big Ten passing leader. And I think a lot of that is due to Gattis and some of the pass game. And we've had successful receivers that have played at a pretty high level in his offense. And so you got to look at that as something that's important. But I think there was a couple holes in what he was doing. I don't think our offensive lines were good enough. And I don't know exactly how much of that is coaching versus how much of that is recruiting. I like to think it's some of both. I think a lot of it's recruiting, to be completely honest, not getting some solid 4 or 5 kids in a class. I don't think we did a good job of that. I don't think that's all on Gattis. But I do think this search for a new OC is going to be really interesting. I think it's an important search, a really important one, because it's going to be who's hands on hand with Malik Washington. And I think that matters a lot. And I do want to see a new Maryland offense. I'm excited to see it. I don't think Michael Locksley should handle the play calling duties, because clearly he doesn't have that anymore. Did a good job at Bama with Tua and all that stuff. But I don't think he has much of that or showed that this year. But same thing with Loxley. It's impossible to call plays when your offensive line can't block. So we'll see exactly. Those numbers are also a little bit unproportionate because when Gattis was the OC, we played teams like UConn and somebody else that was really bad that I can't remember off the top of my head. So it's you kind of go both ways with it. I definitely don't think it's like a home run, like we're gonna be so much better now because he's gone. But I also think there are advantages to him being gone, and I think it was overall the right move. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.